This episode is sponsored by Shutterstock.com. With over 20 million high-quality stock photos, illustrations, vectors, and video clips, Shutterstock helps you take your creative projects to the next level. For 30% off your new account, go to Shutterstock.com and use offer code GAMEBREAKER6. This episode is also brought to you by Audible. For a free 30-day trial and to receive a free audiobook, just head on over to audible.com/Gamebreaker. I get a smile on my face every time I hear this music, by the way. What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 5 of Unicorn Duck Shadow Puppet, the WildStar show, right here on Gamebreaker.tv. This is June 24th. Yeah, June 24th, 2013. Today, Carbine are not holding back on the dungeon difficulty. We're going to talk about that. They'll be hitting up Gamescom and PAX Prime, and we're going to talk about the economy in WildStar as well. All that and more, plus your viewer questions. Got that a-rolling in the UDSP. But first, from Zan.com, editor-in-chief over there, Mr. Scott Hawks. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you, you poor, sick individual?
I'm hanging in there. I'm hanging in there, bro. And it is your wedding anniversary. Congratulations, sir, to you and your lovely wife.
Thank you very much. Thank you. She hasn't killed me yet.
There's still time. Don't worry. There's still time.
Yeah.
And joining us, as always, Mr. Farhan Siddiqui. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I also love this music.
Don't you? I really do. Every time I bring that's why I picked it. Every time it comes up, it just immediately puts a smile on my face. And I'm like, I'm smiling. It's fun. It's fun. All right, first up this week, Carbine. We're at Rezzed in the UK showing of WildStar this week. So just like E3, there were no major announcements, correct? Nothing, no major revelations, nothing. Just basically a chance for the UK press to get a little bit of a peek at the WildStar. Nothing?
Back in my
damn
old
thing.
hometown. Yes.
Oh, is that your hometown, really?
So yeah, that's where I used to live before I came to the States. Yeah,
Where was it actually in the UK?
It was in Birmingham.
Birmingham.
Yes, Birmingham is lovely around there. It's great. Oh,
Do you
where
miss it?
Ozzy Osbourne comes from. Yes, I do miss it actually. I miss the pubs and the chip shops and the
Chip shops.
chip shops. Yeah, chip shops.
But nothing, so nothing. They couldn't give your hometown Birmingham even a little bit. Nothing. Not one little tidbit of info, really?
No, nothing. They just said, "Hello, look, we've got this. Doesn't it look great?" And answer questions.
Well, there was a streamed gameplay demo and a Q&A that you can find over on the YouTubes. I won't play it because I hate the YouTubes and they hate us.
Because YouTube's like the way they are, and they just make our lives difficult.
They really do. Yeah. People always ask why we don't roll video anymore in the shows. That's the reason. Because every time we put anything in the show, whether it's 1 second or 5 minutes, it's like, you've been flagged.
You're rolling the dice.
Copyright infringement. So that's why we don't do it anymore. So go search the YouTubes. You can find that gameplay demo. We've known about the environmental telegraphs forever, it feels like. But I think one of the first videos we saw had an avalanche.
Yeah.
Is that the first we've seen that?
It was the first thing we saw. It was the first thing we saw environmental, wasn't it?
Mhm.
For the telegraphing, yes. Which is cool. It adds a lot of what can I say? It has a lot of randomness and also makes your environment something other than wallpaper, which I'm all for.
How far do you think they're going to take that? We had a big discussion yesterday on I can't remember if it was Twemo or Derpy Dragon. You should go watch both. But our producer Dom had gone on like this Twitter rampage last week about weather in MMOs.
He does that.
Yeah, he does that once in a while. But yeah, he brings up a lot of good points, and he brought up points that he really wanted to see games start to take the weather effects and things like environmental and weather into a lot more consideration, especially in MMOs, and have things affecting. Do you think WildStar are really going to kind of go down that path and maybe do things like dynamic events based on weather or avalanches or different sort of environmental effects?
I think what they're going to do is when somebody asked, I think Matt McCarskey, their art person, director, if they were going to do like random and weather effects or something like that. And I think that what he said is he liked having the control over how it affects the environment, how it affects the art and everything like that. So I think that, clearly they're going to have the weather actually affect the player, like in some way, like or they have the tech to do it at least, like with the avalanche or with other things. But I don't think it's going to be like random, like something happens, just, rain happens, and then now you're going to be slipping and sliding all around or something like that. Cool as that would be. I think
it would be great. I'd love it. It's one of the things that I'd love to see more in MMOs, where we saw weather, like, snow hits and your visibility is like very, like, it's almost as bad as being in nighttime. Like, you can't see anything.
Sure.
Not that nighttime matters, like, really, usually anyway. But if you could, like, something like that, or even if, it actually has a damaging effect, so you need to get into shelter. Stuff like that. I'd love to see that in games, but even to switch up mobs, right? Like in different seasons, maybe different mobs come into different areas and things like that, and actually kind of change as far as the weather changes, and maybe even affecting gathering and resources and stuff like that. I think it seems like a subtle thing, but I really feel like it would add a lot of flavor to these virtual worlds. It does. I mean, this is going back. Not many people play this game, but Saga of Rise-Arm.
Oh my god!
Actually.
Yes.
Wow.
Did all of this.
Yes. How nerdy
going deep.
are you, if you know that?
God, you went deep. You went deep.
Go to the well. Going deep just now.
That was one of the. He was one of the first. Man, let me think of his name. God, what is his name? He was from France. He was one of the first. French. One of the first interviews I ever did as doing sort of a video game MMO podcasty thing. Something like Burdick, something. I can't remember. Somebody will tell me, but yes. Okay. Sorry to sidetrack, but bringing back memories.
That's okay.
That was my first GDC. My first GDC ever was when I met him, and that's when they released all of that whole. You can build your own sort of dungeons and player made questing.
It was really malleable, and so was the environment. Basically, as seasons happened, the landscape did change. So, it wasn't, you didn't just have grass around and then it was snowing, but it was still the same grass and hills and everything else. It just had a snow like texture in the skybox or anything like that. It actually changed the landscape around you. And I'd love to see that more in MMOs, but I don't think that's really going to be WildStar. I think it's more going to be a focused, like, event, like what we're going to talk about in the video itself, and like things like avalanches and stuff like that. It's going to be more in fitting with the environment as it is, rather than the whole environment changing due to weather. It's going to be more focused and have more individual targeting, I think, than that.
I mean, I think what it does really open up, though, it really involves like more tactical, hopefully gameplay. Like the whole telegraph system seems to start off with that, and now this shows us how, you may want to kite and lead mobs into avalanches, maybe for extra damage, dodging out of the way, knocking mobs in, and you using kickbacks and things like that into these things. Or, Farhan's favorite, CCing enemy players in them.
Yeah, I love the idea of having a knockback and then just like kicking somebody and having them fly into some sort of terrible tornado or something.
Well, then also for like open world PvP, when you're doing that, having that sort of event going on could really liven things up a bit. Really throw a random factor in there. Like if you're getting your snot locker broken open as you're fighting someone, having a meteor coming down in between you could give you that moment's respite to get away or something like that. You can have those curses followed by a meteorite sort of moments as you're chasing someone down. So that'd be like a really neat ultimate kind of ability. Like when certain parameters are met and you're in certain really bad conditions, that you all of a sudden have access to this
strike down or something from the gods and just like, kind of turn the tables a little bit. That'd be kind of cool.
Get a druidic class that has power over the weather, can bring down like wherever environmental effect is in that zone, like be it lightning strikes or something, they could like momentarily affect that. That'd be awesome.
Do we know if any of the if the environmental effects like this avalanche are going to carry over into PvP?
I would think it would. I mean, if you're in the zone and it's hitting, I mean, I wouldn't see why, because then you'd have to it'd be difficult. You couldn't really differentiate between what's PvE or PvP in those zones. So I would think it would, especially in open world PvP, that it would certainly have continue to have an effect.
We also got a
sorry, why not do it in like the instance PvP and so on as well? If the
that's what I was getting at. That's what I was getting at. Like what it would open up there would be kind of a pretty interesting take. The thing is, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see how that would work out. Have we seen any MMOs beforehand that actually do stuff like that in instance PvP?
In instance PvP? I mean, I think what they've done is they've tried to do things where players can like cause some sort of like an environmental barrier or something like that to happen. And there's definitely been like environmental hazards like in Hotball or something like that.
Yeah,
but I don't think that there's been something like a random thing.
WVW in Guild Wars 2, there's the weather machines that you can do. So there's been some like attempts at that before, but nothing that widespread. You don't usually get that in MMOs.
We also got to check out on the stream. We got to look. Kind of seems like a small little side note, but for true hardcore MMO players, this is actually a big deal. Is how far you can actually zoom out the camera, which is important to a lot of people, especially PvPers. I guess this could change at any time. They could adjust this stuff, but it could have been just for the purposes of the demo. But did you guys try and zoom out when you've played WildStar? It seems incredibly wide.
Yeah, I didn't get to when I did my play session. I just scroll it out a little bit, but I didn't see how far it could go because I was just in the middle of killing lots of stuff, so I was just busy doing that. But yeah, in the video itself, basically the aura that's in there is like tiny, and it would make sense to do that. See, especially for raiding, I can imagine like a 40-person raid, all of those telegraphs and the boss. You're going to need a serious field of vision to have a real good idea of what's going on.
I mean, that you see that plant monster there with the red circle around it, and if you can sort of see that black silhouette-y looking thing, that's actually a bunny girl. That's actually your character. That's a lot of zoom. You could barely even see what that is. It's like a splotch of black silhouette.
It's a little orange.
Is this almost too much? When I see this, like I'm looking at this image, I'm almost like, man, it's almost too much.
Yeah, it might be. I sort of liked when, just from a thematic standpoint for PvP, like having I mean, obviously, I prefer to have the camera further out just so I can see more, just for playing. But I like it when I don't mind it when the camera it can't be zoomed out that far, because then I think of it as like, okay, I can actually sneak up behind somebody because they can't see everything behind them. So, I mean, like,
this is like turning into like RTS territory zoom. This is just like, might as well just like pull back and see the whole planet at some point. Like, why not just give me infinite zoom? Right? I mean, how? I don't know. I don't know. I sort of wonder. Like, I'm kind of like split on this, because especially when it comes to PvP, I don't know. I know people argue with me all the time on this. I kind of like when you can't really see a whole lot that's going on around you, and people can actually gank you from side or flank or things like that. That I feel like when you have this kind of view, it's such a completely different game almost.
Mm-hmm. There's a real issue, because, and we agree on this, I know, because basically it sets up the idea of anxiety and anticipation if you can't see absolutely everything. So you're constantly on your toes, and you're having to move from side to side to look around all the time to check your periphery, and that becomes part of like good gaming practice. You certainly don't need to do that at that vision. So you have that, and also you got the thing of, do you start to feel just completely disconnected to your character when you zoom that far back? Is that like just something that's out there for you rather than the expression of you? you're going to get lost in a character that's basically a pinprick on the screen almost. So there's balancing that, and then on the other side is they've made obviously some of those effects very big and quite dramatic on the screen to be appealing for everybody to see, and so you got to get
and
the
add
balance.
the whole telegraph system in as well, which adds even more sort of
Yeah.
space around the mob and things like that, or whatever you're fighting.
So,
I don't know.
so
I do agree with you though on that whole end of like, kind of getting disconnected though a little bit. And it takes a little bit away from like those white knuckle moments, especially in PvP when you just don't know what's happening and you're just like, holy F, what's happening? What's happening? What's happening? Like you're just like, you know, slammed from the side for somebody's just like coming in and you don't really realize it. When I don't know. Yeah, I gotta say I'm more of a fan of a closer camera myself, but I totally get why they have to do it.
So, but doing a closer camera when you're doing a 40, as I said, I use raiding because it's the most obvious example.
Yeah, that'd be a nightmare.
Imagine 40 people on the screen on there with a boss that's twice the size of that plant creature, and there's friendly telegraphs going on, and then there's like environmental things going on around you, which will be happening in raids. We know that there's going to be things around in raids that are just going to happen because like steam blowing up out the floor and stuff like that, as well as whatever the boss is doing. You're going to need that kind of field of view to see everything that's going on.
Farah, do you think from a PvP standpoint, like being able to zoom out too far though takes a little bit of sort of the hardcore PvP feel out of it if you can just see everything that's going on and kind of analyze the whole situation?
So like I said, I do like it when it's close so that you can sort of sneak up behind people, and I think it makes it so that you don't have to have the terrain be too complex. Like the further you zoom out your camera, the more complex the terrain actually has to be in order to actually have an effect on anything. And one thing that I didn't like in some MMOs where you can actually zoom it out pretty far is that you'll have this thing happen where when you have sort of like a complex terrain with some like walls and pillars to line of sight, then whenever you walk past it, then the camera has to zoom in really close all of a sudden because otherwise your character would be obstructed by the pillar or whatever it is. So then you end up with this weird back and forth of the camera zooming in, zooming out because you set it to be way out there, but then all of a sudden there's a little wall or something occluding it, so something has to zoom in. And I never really liked that. I always felt like that felt really weird and not great. But I think that for PvP, you can zoom out this far, it's going to make the onus on them to make the terrain interesting a lot stronger. They're going to have to do something in order to make, because like if you can sort of see it everywhere, and then I don't know, I sort of like the idea of actually being able to hide behind a wall and not have the enemy see me. But
I agree.
I think in PvP you'll have people going in and out a lot because if you're at max distance all the time, doing skill shots against individual targets, especially in PvP, with how quick people move and the random way they move, is going to be really difficult when you're at that sort of range. When you're aiming and you've got like a tiny telegraph basically on the screen, aiming at whoever you're going at, it's going to be really hard. You're going to need to be closer in to be more accurate, I think, with things. Except when you're laying down an AoE, then fire the back would probably be a bit of an advantage because then you can kind of see the area better and how to cut people off from certain positions using AoE. So I think there'll be a lot of zooming in and zooming out. I mean, your mouse wheel will be one of your most important buttons in PvP if you can go that far back.
They also showed off a new dungeon, Stormalon's Lair, for level 20s. Has it?
Storm Talon's Lair.
Storm Talons.
You can get in from level 17, but it's recommended for level 20.
Have we seen this before? Have you seen this before, Scott?
They did an update actually, like a WildStar Online. One of their weekly updates was about the dungeon a few weeks ago, maybe like a few months ago.
Well, I think
originally it was supposed. I think in the video it was mentioned to be like for level 30, but I think it was CBT2, the patch notes. Then they fixed it as being as 17 to open and 20 is recommended.
And if you actually look at the character, like on the screen, you can see that the character's level is 21 that he's playing on, and the boss was level 20. So yeah, I think that was just a misspoken error.
I think for anybody out there who has not seen this video, the big takeaway, which you should go watch it, is for any of you out there that possibly are worried that telegraphs are going to make WildStar too easy. Am I right?
Yeah. It really is a case. We've said that having telegraphs allows them to make the time between the ability going off and you needing to get it out of the way much shorter than in many MMOs. Usually, many MMOs like they go, "It's coming! Look out! Look out!" And there we go. With telegraphs, it's like, okay, we've given you a visual interpretation. There it is. If you're not out of the way, that's your fault. So that the time between the ability going on and yours is shorter, and you'll see as the characters running around, like new telegraphs appearing under their feet constantly. So they're always, like, not always, but a lot of the time they're having to be mobile. You can't just stand there and just take the hits. So tanking is going to be really interesting, I think. It's going to be a choice between keeping that good positioning to make sure that you're not getting your team into the sort of conal attacks that are coming off, but also if you're staying in on a lot of those, how much damage you're going to be able to actually absorb. Seeing there's so many attacks coming down so often, it's going to be really interesting to see how that all works together.
One of the bosses has an entire room of tornadoes is moving back and forth constantly that you basically have to avoid. Kind of reminds me of a max level heroic dungeon in Cataclysm, but this is level 20. This is for level 20. Like, they're doing stuff like that at level 20. The last boss was a dragon, because apparently even in sci-fi we still love dragons, I guess, for sure.
Of course. Space dragons
for the win. At first it's got kind of attacks that you would kind of expect. So it's got like frontal attacks, it's got side swipes, pretty much the norm, kind of what you'd expect. But the telegraphs, it's not like they give you all the time in the world to dodge by looking at this video, do they? This looks like it's going to be very difficult.
Well, I think for some of the telegraphs, like the frontal cone, like he sort of does this move where he just sort of like slams his hand down and then almost immediately does some damage. So there's no reaction time. I think that the cone there isn't really about like having a cone that you're like, oh, get out of this in time kind of thing. It's more of a tool for the tank to know, like, okay, this is like your cleave, and so everyone sort of knows, okay, this is the area you don't need to stand in, and that's like really useful, because there's, I mean, how many boss fights have there been where they have like a frontal cleave, but they slightly vary the amount of like the angle that you have to stand in. So is it 180? Is it like 90 degrees? What is it? So now you just know, like, there's no excuse to stand in the frontal cleave. You're like, oh, I didn't know. Well, there's a red thing. So don't.
And for tanking as well, you spend a lot of your time with basically that monster's face there, filling your screen, and a lot of the time it's difficult to get a bead on what angle things are coming at. So having those telegraphs down there are really helpful for positioning as a tank, as I sort of mentioned earlier. And it's not just for you, but for making sure that where you are and where your team is, and making sure that cone is just not facing them. And having that telegraph down, really, it'd be really useful. But what it means is, as I said, that'll be really useful. You know where it's coming from. But it means that they can reduce the amount of time they give you as a warning to do that, to make you have to be quicker to do it. So,
well, that's the thing. I don't think. Go ahead.
There's been a number of like WoW bosses that are like, you know, the dragons that do the flame breath forward kind of thing. And how many times there's been like a number of times where, you know, they want to animate the dragon, so it's not just like sitting there really static, looking straight forward all the time. So it's like moving its head around, and so like, I'm like, oh, okay, it's facing its head over here, and I'm standing over here, but I'm actually in front of it, sort of, so I end up getting flame breath, and then everyone's mad. Like, okay, yeah, now there's a cone, and I know, okay, it's actually facing this way, even if its head is doing this weird thing.
And that's the thing, I think you said, like, a lot of these are not totally, for some of these aren't really made to actually dodge out of the way. It's a know for positioning, because if you're watching this video looking at this, you would need like instantaneous reactions to basically get out of the way of these things. It's not going to happen. So, I mean,
there's going to be ones that you will need to get out of, and there's going to be ones that you got to make that decision to stay in on. And what it does, it lets your healers know, okay, I need to make sure that I've got a heal coming now. So it helps tanks, helps healers, helps everybody just for positioning and what they're doing as well. Yeah,
more of those basic attacks don't seem to be like you're not really going to be expected to dodge all of those. You're going to kind of be taking the brunt. Your tank's going to be taking the brunt of that stuff. I want to talk about some of the abilities, but really quick, I want to tell you guys about Shutterstock. Shutterstock. Very happy to have these guys on as sponsors over on the Gamebreaker.tv. Love Shutterstock. Use it daily as we are working on new stuff. I want to show you guys something today. Check this out. This is on Shutterstock.com, and it's called Instant, and I've been using this a lot. If you need inspiration, like if you're kind of like, maybe at a block and you just kind of need to, kind of think of something or just need some cool pictures. Let's say you're making a guild website. Let's see, cavalry. Maybe that's kind of cavalry sounds good. We're making it medieval cavalry stuff. So you just type in a word and basically it just populates a bunch of cool stuff and you just start going through. Like, look at this. This is how awesome is this artwork? Like, there's your basis for a brand new website. There you go. You're building a, fantasy-esque website or something. There you go. You need icons, artwork, photography, stock footage, whatever you need. Shutterstock. Oh, these are cool. Check these out. Like, how much flavor would that add to your guild website? Like, those are awesome. Like, those are great. I actually got to save these. Save to Lightbox. I'll save them in icons. Yeah, I'm saving those because you're probably going to see those pop up somewhere because those are rad. Check it out. I want to save you guys 30% off. All you got to do is go over to Shutterstock.com, make a new account. Make sure to use promo code Gamebreaker6 when you get in there. And on checkout, you're going to get 30% off on your new account. That's Gamebreaker6. Definitely check it out, whatever you need. Stock footage, photography, vectors, backgrounds, you name it, they got it. Really can help your guild website, your personal website, or a creative project, whatever you got going on. Maybe something for school, maybe your YouTube videos, maybe you need like animation logos or something for the top of your thing. Check it out because there's probably a lot of great artwork there and video files that can help you kind of just take your projects to the next level. So let's talk a little bit about the abilities. You definitely do want to avoid some of that stuff, like room filling AoE attacks that have you running basically as fast as possible, stuff like that. I'm watching that video. I mean, there were mechanics in there that you kind of only see in raids and other games, weren't there?
Lots of. There's quite a few abilities there I've seen in raids in a couple of different games. I mean, especially we use it unfortunately a lot, but it's just true. World of Warcraft, there's the idea is I've seen in a heroic dungeon, especially. There was I can't remember the name of it now, sorry, but basically the room fills and then there's a spot, there's a vortex that you all need to get into, which is the only safe spot, and then you have to stay there for a few seconds and get out, and if you're not, you're slowed and taking lots of damage. Similar to that, there's a raid boss with the phoenix that goes around, and there's a fiery twisters that are spinning around the room that you have to avoid, that you have to run out of. So those sort of effects we've seen in raids before, definitely.
Let's be real. I mean, this is a level 20 dungeon. I keep saying it, but I'm just kind of amazed that it's such a low level dungeon. I mean, if you get hit by one of those big attacks, you're not going to get one. You're not going to get one shot, are you?
No, I mean, like if you look closely at the thing on high definition, then you see that and I'm assuming a little bit here that the numbers there are actually accurate to what you'd be itemized for, which I think is a reasonable assumption. But anyway. So that Esper had like around 4,000 health and like 3,500 shields, and then like the big room filling AOE thing that you sort of had to run towards the dragon to get, like every single ticket that was doing about 500 damage. So like you can take a few ticks of that and you'll be all right, and you're gonna inevitably take some at the end there. You sort of just have to. That's like damage that has to be healed or mitigated, but So they clearly don't expect you to dodge every single thing, or else you just die. There's going to be a ramp up to that.
I think the important thing from seeing this though is what they're doing is they're teaching you at a fairly low level the valuable skills that you're going to sort of need as you level up and go into like higher end raiding.
Thankfully, finally, just the amount of games I play where you start learning how to raid at max level. Why start teaching skills that you're going to need in the game not until just before you're going to need them? Make them part of the game early, and then people can be more likely to be proficient at them, rather than not very good at them at all. by the time they get to actually needing them. So if you have the learning curve that starts early in the game and then ramps up through it, rather than starts at the end of the game and then suddenly throws them into the deep end, it just makes a lot more sense to me.
On top of that, something, Scott, that's kind of interesting here. You're going to be able to CC bosses in WildStar. I think most people probably know that, but that's going to be interesting and a lot of requiring, I would say, a lot of group coordination. I don't think I'm sure they're not going to allow you to sort of chain CC a boss, but it's going to be interesting.
You've got all these wonderful abilities and all these telegraphs, but no, you can just CC it to the ground and it can't move or do anything, and then you win. No, I can't see that happening.
I have to admit, I was a little bit disappointed though when I watched it, because like the first thing I saw so he's playing as an Esper, and one of the abilities that the Esper has is like this thing where this big hand or fist or something comes down and knocks the enemies down, and so whoever was playing it just sort of had a habit of starting with that every single time he started to fight, and so like he would go into that big air elemental boss, whatever his name was, like start with an A. But yeah, so he'd use it, and this little tiny bit of text flashed up, and I was like, oh, text. I'm going to pause the thing and look at that frame and read the text, and it says, like, infinite interrupt armor. I'm like, oh, it's infinite, so you can't actually... They don't actually have that mechanic going throughout the thing. And later on, like, I think in the thing, the developers talk about how there's, like, a point where you actually do need to interrupt him, and then that's the point where you need to use interrupt armor. And I thought, okay, maybe it's like, this specific boss has this mechanic where he has infinite interrupt armor except for this one phase where you need to interrupt him. But then like he starts to fight with the Storm Talon, and then it says infinite interrupt armor again. So I don't know how far they're actually going to let you apply CC to the bosses just based on that little bit of thing, but we'll have to see exactly what it is.
Well, that's it. I mean, each boss that can use the same mechanics with the interrupt armor that are going to be used by the players. And then perhaps different bosses are going to have stronger interrupt armor than others. So with some interrupts going to be important, with others you're going to have to find other ways to get through the fight. And just having the ability to vary that up means that basically on your range of abilities, crowd control is something usually when you go into bosses, you just forget they're even part of your arsenal in most games. And just in this, they're a viable possibility with some of them, perhaps.
The Q&A portion didn't amount to much, but there was one really interesting question, which was made much more intriguing by the completely dodged answer that they got. So the question was along the lines of tanking and healing in other games always has issues with popularity based on the two roles, difficulty, and the lack of rewards. And now in WildStar, with players dodging out of your heals, now it's even harder. The answer was basically they're not tying the roles to one class.
We already know that.
Yeah.
I mean, because with Spellslingers and Espers can do like DPS and heals, and we haven't had the full announcement yet of the actual main healer class in the game. So there's going to be at least 3 classes that you're going to be able to lay some heals out with. So that's something that we already knew. But
do you think it's a valid concern, though? Do you think it's a valid concern?
It's always a valid concern when you're using the Trinity, basically, in any game. Are there going to be enough tanks and healers? Because basically the most straightforward class to get into, role to get into, is DPS. To be very good at it isn't straightforward, but it's the most straightforward to get into. And there's often shortages of tanks or healers when people are sitting around. There's thousands of DPS waiting for a few tanks or healers sometimes. And so it has to be a valid concern because it always is in MMO.
What do you think, Farhan? The tank dodges the heal, the tank dies, the healer hates life, the tank hates life.
Well, I mean, like, that's definitely going to happen. And I mean, just speaking personally, I'm almost certainly going to end up rolling a healer in WildStar just because I sort of miss that gameplay. Like with Guild Wars and everything else, I sort of miss being able to play a healer, and I did that back in WoW. So I'm looking forward to that. But one of the things that I think is going to happen is that you're going to end up sort of trying to plan out your builds and everything else around these mechanics. So if you're a tank healer, then you're probably going to want to bring some of the heals that aren't like really hard to hit with a telegraph kind of thing, like either like a wider cone or something that's actually just like a single target ability that isn't telegraphed necessarily, because they definitely have said that there are like heals that aren't telegraphed. There are some that are telegraphed, there's some that are targeted, and then there's also going to be like they've said a number of other healing mechanics, like maybe like and this sort of makes me hesitate a little bit, but they have like a thing that you can drop and then it'll allow players to go up to it and get healed, which makes me think of Lightwell and sort of cringe a little bit.
And we all know how popular Lightwell is.
But yeah, so I think that which heals you bring, it's going to depend on what kind of healing role you have. It's not necessarily going to be that, okay, I have to just suffer and use like these telegraph heals when I'm a tank healer, and I know that the tank has to be dodging around a lot in this fight. If it's a fight where the tank actually can stand somewhat still in some phases, then maybe you can actually hit them with those telegraphs. And like they said in the actual demo, maybe your tank isn't that great at dodging, or maybe he doesn't want to dodge that much. So he puts on abilities that help him mitigate and absorb damage. But then, since he's taking the damage, he's not moving around as much, which means that the healer can then use abilities. It's easier for him to land, his telegraph heals.
I think what you're going to see... Sorry, I was just saying, what you're going to see is that tanking, healing, and everything else is going to be much more of a team-based responsibility. As you said, like, if people are jumping out of the way of heals, like if you're laying down a heal telegraph and someone's jumping out of it, that's their fault.
Learn to
so
play,
when they
dude.
start saying you didn't heal me, you say, well, tough luck, you should have stood where I put the heal. And of course, bad healers are going to put it in the wrong places and all the rest of it. But what it's going to mean is that movement. It's why end game raiding is going to be incredible when it comes down to the complexity of it. When you've got the really difficult bosses, when you've got having to make sure that people are standing in the right place, that people are able to arrive at the last second to get that heal off by actually moving to them and aiming at them. And you've got everybody else having to make sure that they're not jumping out the way of heals, that they're in the right positions, and everybody's having to coordinate like that. The complexity of it means it's going to be, I would hope, incredibly challenging. And the best guilds are really going to shine in this because of what it all adds up to. And that's why you need to learn from lower levels what you're doing, because by the time you get to the end, it's going to be tough.
You also have to keep in mind that there's actually a lot more information out there for healers to take advantage of with all the enemy telegraphs. So, why are you aiming your healing telegraph in the middle of all the red? Like, you're going to aim it like at a safe place, and then everyone else is going to be running that safe place anyway because they don't want to stand in the red. So, like, you're going to have a lot more potential for coordinate. And I think this is part of the reason why they put it in telegraphs in the first place. It makes it much easier to coordinate. You don't have to be like shouting at each other over voice and having like delay and everything else. Everyone knows, okay, that is the place that is, not, you don't take damage because there's no red there. And then people put down some green stuff there, and then, okay, everyone's sort of coordinating.
Healers can really become shot callers in raids now, perhaps more than in other games, because you can tell people where to go. Like a lot of the time, like your healers are too busy looking at bars to really be organizing raids a lot of the time in your classic MMO. They're like watching everybody's bars and making sure that the health. So calling shots on where people need to go at certain times is difficult. Now, all right, I'm putting down that green patch. Everybody needs to be there. So healers can really orchestrate the flow and movement of a raid and an encounter much more perhaps than they might in other games. So healers can really take the lead on a lot of things, I think, because they'll be the positions to see the fight better than some, but also they'll be able to tell people where to go specifically, because if you don't go there, literally you will die if you don't go where I tell you to.
I hope it's really, well, I think a lot of this is going to stem on is how fun healing classes to play. It's at low levels, especially right from the get-go, not just at later levels. So we'll see how that shakes out. Next up, Carbine have an events calendar up on their website, basically for the year. So they're going to be hitting up the development conference in Brighton, UK in July. Scott, have you lived there as well?
No.
I
have friends who live there, but I haven't lived there personally. No.
Do you miss Brighton, though? Lovely place.
It's great. Yeah, I love it. It's magic.
It's magic. They're also going to be hitting up Gamescom in Cologne, Germany. That's in August. And PAX Prime in Seattle at the very end of August into September. They also made a fairly heavy-handed hint at some kind of appearance at Comic-Con.
Yes.
Didn't
It'd be
they?
comical.
Anyone going to any of these conventions?
I've been trying to come up with an excuse to go to Comic-Con. Like, I have a press pass for Comic-Con, but I don't really have a reason to really go.
Now you have one.
Now I might have one. Yeah, I might have to nudge people at Zam and say, "Hey, I think it's important that I'm at Comic-Con." Honest.
I think you should. Gamescom is probably the biggest European gaming conference, probably the biggest conference almost out there. What do you think? Any speculation on what we might see at Gamescom in August? Think we get a big reveal?
Eighth month of the year. If it's going to be out in 2013, which is the plan, we've been told they're aiming at 2013. If we get to August and we still haven't had a release date yet, or I would think maybe we might get it there, or at least a confirmation that it would be for this year.
Where do you see release date coming at Gamescom or PAX?
PAX.
PAX. You think you're gonna go with the community driven?
I think so. Yeah.
I kind of think you're right. What do you think, Farhan?
Yeah, I think PAX would be a good one.
You think we're gonna get a release date?
I hope so. I mean, if not, then I'm gonna be really worried. But I think at Gamescom, I think hopefully we'll see war plots. I really want to see like an actual like demo or some video or something of war plots. I'm sure that they're testing in some fashion, at least internally. Like at least make like a little video just showing us what's going on. I want to see that raid boss punching down something.
All right, I got Charles Bill Durham talking about the economy, but first I want to tell you guys about Squarespace. We just talked about how you need a bunch of assets to make your website look good. There is no excuse in the world for you to have a website that looks like crap. None. Zero. Not in 2013. Not when you've got things like Squarespace. There literally is not. Go over to squarespace.com. Start with one of their templates. They are gorgeous, 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 awesome templates. You start with one of these, and within an hour, few hours, you've got an awesome looking guild website, personal website, whatever you're looking to put together, that doesn't look like it was made in 1985 on GeoCities. Yeah, I went there. That's right, I'm old school. Seriously, their layouts and their design, they have something for everyone. If you're a blogger, they have templates surrounding for bloggers. If you're a photographer, you just want to show images and video and things like that. Maybe you want to start a site just to kind of, maybe just your chronicles in MMO gaming or something like that. You could start with one of those. If you've got a business and you're actually selling stuff online, they've got all the e-commerce and web store stuff that you need built right in. You don't need to painfully try and get that all set up, because that's a nightmare if you don't know what you're doing there. Squarespace makes it really, really, really easy to get up and running today with just an awesome looking website. It's just phenomenal. The templates are just so beautiful, and all you got to do is start swapping out photos, images, text, all that good stuff, and your guild has a website that looks like a 2013 website. Go over to squarespace.com, sign up, create a new account. I want to save you guys 10% off today. Just use the offer code Gamebreaker6 on your checkout. Gamebreaker with the number 6, and going to get yourself 10% off the Squarespace. Love those guys. So Charles Bull.
Yeah, not Dull Burham. Bull Durham.
Not Dull Burham. That's where my brain went, because it's Durham. But Charles Bull Durham. He talks about the economy. So who is Charles? Anybody have some background on him? Is he the man to talk about WildStar's economy?
He's one of them. He's on the econ team. Primus Majda is one of the other ones. He's actually really active on the WildStar Central forums in talking with people. But Bull is really active on Twitter in terms of responding to people's questions about the econ and what they're planning on doing.
He was asked about EVE Online was the example that was used. And shocking no one, WildStar is not EVE Online. So not sure if you guys were wondering that, but it's not. But low-level resources are going to be for low-level players. You can't craft them up to be relevant at the max level. Here's his reasoning behind this. He says, in WildStar, the resources are always more thematically tied to a player's practical progression through the game, growing with the player. Since a WildStar player can't just move over to the next asteroid belt when high-level players remove all the resources from the area, we set up a system where high-level players don't really need the stuff. At least outside of EVE Online, the issues are obvious. But low-level resources needed by high-level players, so their price on the auction house basically skyrockets?
Yeah, I mean, like, if you need those resources everywhere, then, basically the end-game players will end up needing it, and then presumably they'll have better ability to make money. So then if they still need it and they have lots of money, then the cost will go up, which could be bad for low-level players who want to buy it.
If you have wanted resource and people with a large disposable income, which is usually what happens at high level, it means that they'll throw more money at it. They'll just say, "Oh, on all that, so I'll just buy it all out, and I'll pay way over the odds for it because I just don't care." And then when that price goes up, people go, "Right, I want that price all the time now," and so it raises up. And then people go, "All right, I want it again," and it just goes up and up and up and up, and that's what happens. So yeah, it's a difficult thing, and you have to be really careful of because inflation just kills an economy.
When you guys read this, looking at that quote again, did you guys read that as possibly that shared resources for everyone kind of seems unlikely in WildStar?
It's possible, yes. If it's a case that it's something that everybody can get a hold of, but moving over to the next, we're not able to move over to the next part, then it could be, that it's not shared, especially when you consider you're going to hit something over the back of the head, is what it turns out. Look, I'm hitting a mine, and it's just turned into a giant creature. That might make it difficult to make it for everyone, because you want it to be something individual. If you're actually hunting down your node, perhaps making it an individual one-person thing.
He says WildStar players can't just move over to the next asteroid belt when a high-level player removes all the resources from that area. Mm-hmm. That's what it totally makes me think. You're just mining a node, and it's going to go away, and there's nobody just like sitting smacking on it right after you.
Like Scott was just saying, I mean, if the node gets up and runs away, or it gets up and starts biting you, or something like that, then is that going to be a phase? Then, if you're trying to share it with everyone else, then do you have to go up and then you don't see them fighting something? You just sort of see them waving at the air or whatever, or they're going to have to.
It's feasible you could do it still. It's feasible you could still have it.
Yeah, but it might mess with the immersion a little bit. Like if you just sort of don't see that happen, or if the thing stays there and then you attack it, and then now another one will pop up. I don't know.
It could be. I mean, it could just be. It's kind of like sharing loot off a mob. That it's basically turns into a mob. Once you hit it, it turns into a mob. Everybody can attack it. Once
and then everyone has
loot it.
Whoever tags it, everyone who tags it will get the mining materials out of it. Maybe.
It's feasible, but it would lend itself towards the idea that it would be an individual from that explanation. But it's still possible that you could have it that it's shared loot.
All right, next up he said, from an economic standpoint, I love lotteries because they'd be an extra money sink. The extra money sink means I could reduce the costs of, say, item repair, and the economy would remain balanced. However, gambling is not welcome in all regions and can create animosity. Consequently, while we have thought about lotteries and similar systems, we are unlikely to have features like this at launch. Boo! Boo! I'm not surprised at their stance on this. There's a reason most games don't do gambling, but I don't know. Didn't Guild Wars 2 just introduce gambling with MOA racing?
Kinda, yeah. But it's not.
Really.
It's not Eve. It's not Eve level craziness.
No, I want Eve level craziness.
We always want Eve level craziness.
Sorry. Next up, he says that there will not be specific player shops or advertising outside of announcements in chat. While it is exciting to have your own storefront, it forces players to visit your storefront in some way, which creates a huge barrier for your customers to overcome. In addition, there is a significant amount of server overhead. In this end, everyone loses, which is why you don't see it in modern MMOs anymore. Hey, Scott, you want to start an EverQuest Next show?
Sure.
All right. How do you feel about player-run shops? Tell me how you really feel, Scott, because I know you got an opinion on this one.
How do I feel about player-run shops, as in standing there and going, I got things for sale, come get things.
Paper, sir, paper.
Paper, here, you could get it from me, here. Oh God, this is so sad and I'm so old. I used to really actually enjoy the idea of bartering and what that brought with it, and the sort of social ties that created in game. However, it's also a rampant pain in the arse to do, and for the vast majority of people who play MMOs, it's about as fun as sticking a spoon up your nose. So I can understand them not really wanting to go that route. But yeah, I like the idea of, like, you know, trade, going out there and having to trade and make deals and all the rest of it. That's sort of fun. But you just can't do it. People don't enjoy it. Like, you're just saying, okay, 80% of people who play, maybe 90% who play this game, this is a complete way that you won't enjoy selling the stuff that you want to sell. So,
yeah, see, I have mixed feelings on this as well. I don't know about you, Farhan. Where do you sit on this one? Because I have mixed feelings. Because I've seen it done in a few games that I kind of really enjoyed it, SWG, and then I've seen other games where I've absolutely hated it, Lineage 2. So,
I think that I'm sort of at a spot where what I would like them to do, like, if they're not going to do something that allows players to, like, have their own shops or something like that, I want them to keep something like old WoW enchanting, where, like, you still had to have some sort of interaction between players, like before they put in the little, what do they call it, the little scrolls or whatever that you put the enchant onto, and then you put them on the auction house or whatever. I actually liked it when there was a little bit of negotiating. You sort of, like, watched chat to see what people's prices were, and then you sort of waited for them to log off. And then, like, this is what I did. I waited for them to log off, and then I put mine at that price or a little bit higher or something like that. Or I figured out when they would be online and sort of try to steal their enchanting market out from underneath them. So, yeah.
I gotta say I was a little surprised by this. I was a little surprised by their stance. I would have thought that they would have used the player housing as a place to be able to do this. Since you're all going to have your own plot and it's sort of, like, separated and segregated from a lot of, like, sort of the game world, I guess, so to speak. And of course, I don't know about the server overhead and that kind of stuff, but it seems like if you only allowed players to put some sort of vendor thing in on their player property, that would, you know, get rid of all of the, like, you know, if you guys played Lineage 2, it was like you'd go into the main area and there would be, like, you know, 500 people sitting down just with little things above their heads, and there's just a wall of people. Like, it would kind of get rid of that with all the lag and stuff. I don't know. I think, I guess what really remains to be seen yet is how dependent the whole system and the economy and resources and crafting in general are going to play in WildStar, if it's going to be that big of a deal. Because it only makes sense if it's, I feel like it'll really only make sense when players can create the best in slot stuff and have the best stuff in the game. Then it makes sense.
Yeah.
When it can at least feel individual. That's right.
Because then you want to seek out those players and you want to find their shops and you want to go, like, I need to go to Farhan's shop because I know he's got the best, you know, swords out there. Like, I got to go to his place and do that. I think that creates another social stickiness kind of aspect to it. So,
it really does. But the problem is, again, there are very few MMOs that have systems that would actually make that work. Because for most MMOs, everybody's got the same stuff, so why bother? Why would you don't feel you have to travel anywhere? You'll just go to the nearest person that's got kind of the cheapest amount. That's why auction houses work, because it's completely against, okay, I got 300 of the exact same type of sword, which one is one copper cheaper?
No, you have to make it extremely, extremely intricate and very customizable and down to, like, percentage points, and very hard to make the best stuff in the game. But, oh well, moving on. Finally, Charles had this to say. He said work order boards were on drawing board. So he said there are technical issues with it that could lead to players trolling each other. So it is on the back burner for right now. Interesting.
Mhm.
I don't know. Are work order boards a way for me to put up an advertisement asking for like a shiny pistol or shininess for another player to complete for me? I don't really know. Pretty cool feature. Seen it in other games. What kind of trolling do you think he's possibly talking about with the system? Any ideas?
I mean, I guess you could be setting up goods with like good prices on them, and then you're able to just bring them down right away. So you got people running out there making like expensive goods that they could that are going to cost them a lot, and then go around to hand them in, and it's gone. Oh, great! Now I'm lumbered with stuff. Perhaps that's one way you could do it at the moment. Depends on the system. Usually, if you do a work order, that's a commitment on both ends. So if that's not all set up, then yeah, best not to implement that just yet.
Any ideas, Faran? Any trolling ideas? I'm taking notes.
You know, I don't know if I should tell you them, but I guess you could possibly do something where when you're you sort of, well, I guess sort of like what Scott was saying, where you sort of make a very annoyingly difficult thing to craft or something like that, and then they go out and they do it, and then they pull it down. But besides that, I can't really think of anything. And yeah, like if you put something in to sort of like hold the work order there, and like you have to put your money up at the same time, then I don't know what. Maybe they don't want to make you put all your money in all at once.
'Tis backburnered right now, so we have to wait for the work orders to rear its head, and they fix that all up. All right, let's do some viewer questions. If you have a question for the UDSP crew, send it over to submit@gamebreaker.tv, and also keep an eye on our Facebook page, facebook.com/gamebreaker.tv. This week's viewer questions are brought to you by Audible. For a free 30-day trial and to receive a free audiobook, just head on over to audible.com/gamebreaker. Just use that URL. Hook you up with a free 30-day trial and get a free audiobook. Thanks to Audible. So first up this week, James Burke Frazier says, what does the team think of Gaffney's Rares Market comment from the I Hate MMORPGs.com interview? Who wants to take that one?
Well, I think what he was talking about in that comment was he was basically asked what he thinks of different ways to add in like unique items or something that players could basically have in the economy to be trading and things like that. So in Ultima Online there were a bunch, and this is one of the games that Gaffney, I think he worked on. I don't remember what role he had on Ultima Online, but he did work on the series. And in Ultima Online there was this case where there were items, mostly like bugged items, like a glitched terrain tile or something like that you could get into your inventory. And those become like super rare because you'd only have like a few of them on the server before the bug got fixed or whatever got fixed. With the terrain tile one, for example, you could only get it right after the server came up. So you'd have to like run over there and then grab it before anyone else did, and that messed something up. So what he's talking about is he liked the idea, and he thought it was an underutilized thing in MMOs to have items that were super, super, super rare. And he was talking about like it's hard to design them into the game, and developers obviously don't like stuff that just comes out of bugs. At least usually they don't like that. So, but if you design something in the game, even if it's like a super, super rare drop, like I'm trying to think of something like Baron's Mount from original WoW or something like that in Stratholme. Like that was a really rare mount, but people would get it, and then like it wasn't like something that like, you're like in really shock about. You're just like, okay, that's a really rare mount. Even if you put it like a 0.1% with the player base that they're going to have, you know, a great number of people are going to have them. So what he's talking about with those rares are items that you literally have like a few of them on the entire server, and then it becomes like a really hot commodity that people really want, and it's like this thing that you can be really proud of. And I think that would be really cool for them to put into WildStar, especially if it was like a thing that would be cosmetic for your house, like something to make your house really stand out from other people's houses. I think that would be an immense. I don't think that they should go in like with some sort of combat thing, something that would affect stats or something like that. I think if it's a cosmetic item, then it'll be good.
You know where I'm like, I'm as bad as you. I'm like, I want incredibly rare recipes that make you something awesome, that make that individual crafter someone everybody flocks to like they're, a deity. I want stuff like that. But that's unlikely to happen. And in the context of the question he was asking, basically, he was asked whether he thought that things like that would bring people back into gaming. And what he says was, solid systems. There are much more obvious answers to that question. There are things there that he thinks that it'd be great to have something like that in there. But if you're looking at getting people back into MMOs, perhaps who've drifted away, there are other facets of the game that he thinks will do a better job.
All right, next up, this one from Kyle Harpster. He says, when do you think Carbine Studios will release the 2 unannounced classes? Any thought on what they may be? Met be?
They met be.
They met
What
be.
they met be.
Met be. What do you think they met be?
It's a healer and another one. And an engineer.
All right, and when? Soon.
And it'll be Tuesday.
There you go.
There you go.
The day before WildStar Wednesday.
Yes.
Perfect.
Just to throw people off.
Yeah. They like doing
They're cunning.
that. Farhan, do you agree?
Yeah.
Disagree? Tuesday?
I agree 150% that it's going to be Tuesday.
Next up from
Tuesday's
Jade,
the new Wednesday.
Edgar Murr. Are you afraid of being burned by this game? Time and time again, we've all gotten excited about MMOs and been massively let down. Are you trying to keep your hype in check? Farhan does not keep his hype in check.
No. I am 100% just into this game, and if it crashes, then I will just cry and cry and cry and just be broken forever.
I have no game filter left anymore. It's been destroyed by so many games. Please make it good. Please.
Please don't make Scott Hawks cry. Editor-in-chief over at Zam.com. Go over to Zam.com. Check it out. Zam.com. Follow Scott on the Twitter at Jarimor, Jarimor. And, of course, come over here every Monday for the UDSP WildStar show live at 1 PST every single week. Farhad Siddiqui, follow him on the Twitter at Unindel, Unindel. Of course, tune in to UDSP every Monday at 1 PST to see Farhan as well. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. You can follow me at Gary Gannon. Follow Gamebreaker TV, Gamebreaker TV, and be sure to go check out our brand new website called freetoplay.tv. Got that one up and rolling, and a facelift is coming for freetoplay.tv in the next 24 to 48 hours. Keep an eye on that. Yes, we just launched, and yes, we're changing the entire website the way it looks. Yes, we do that here a lot. So check it out. We'll see you next Monday for some more Unicorn Duck Shadow